Chapter 1, Part 4, The Collapse. Bow falls, truth emerges, scenes 139-147. The battlefield of Kurukshetra has reached a deafening silence. The conches have blown, the warriors stand poised, but in the heart of Arjuna a storm rages. What began as courage and duty has now melted into unbearable sorrow. A few moments ago, he saw his loved ones arrayed against him, grandsires, teachers, brothers, sons. Now, his vision shifts beyond individuals to something larger, the unraveling of Dharma itself. Arjuna fears not just for himself, but for the fabric of society. He imagines the aftermath of war. He sees families torn apart, sons who will never return, wives who will mourn endlessly, children wandering without guidance. The rituals that connect generations to their ancestors will wither, and with them, the very structure of culture. For Arjuna, the battlefield no longer represents kingdoms to be won. It represents the extinction of harmony, tradition, and righteousness. The bow in his hand feels heavier with every thought. Gandiva, once an extension of his very soul, now trembles in his grasp. Sweat gathers on his brow, his chest tightens, and his body refuses to obey. This is not the physical weakness of a warrior. It is the crushing burden of conscience. Around him, others stand ready. Bhasma steadies his bow with eyes fixed on Dharma. Drona grips his weapons, torn between affection for Arjuna and loyalty to Hastinapura. Across the field, Duryodhana waits impatiently, certain that Arjuna's hesitation is only temporary. But none of them can feel what surges inside Arjuna, the clash between heart and duty. Draupadru's humiliation flashes before him, her cries, her helplessness, her oath of vengeance. He recalls his promise to her, that Dharma would be restored through battle. Yet even that sacred vow now feels like a dagger. For what use is justice if it is bought at the cost of countless widows and fatherless children? Abhimanyu's face appears in his mind, bright, young, and fearless, eager to prove his worth in the greatest war of the age. Arjuna trembles. Is this son destined to be another casualty of his father's decision? Barbaric, though not on the battlefield, lingers in legend. With 3 arrows he could end the war, but the cost would still be devastation. Even divine power could not erase the truth that war leaves only ashes, no matter who claims victory. The more Arjuna reflects, the more he sinks into despair. His eyes blur, his voice shakes, and his once steady arms collapse. The Gandiva slips from his hands, striking the floor of the chariot with a dull, final sound. The bow that had never abandoned him, the bow that symbolized his strength, lies useless. Arjuna lowers himself onto the seat of the chariot, shoulders slumped, spirit broken. The great warrior of the Pandavas, undefeated, unmatched, invincible, now trembles like a leaf in the wind. He has not yet fought a single arrow's worth of battle, and yet he feels utterly defeated. This is more than hesitation. This is collapse. And yet, within that collapse lies the seed of transformation. When the outer strength crumbles, the inner truth emerges. Arjuna has reached the point where his own knowledge, his own willpower, his own strategies have failed him. Only here, in this sincere breakdown, can the voice of divine wisdom truly enter. Krishna, silent until now, watches with serene understanding. He does not rush to fill the silence. He allows Arjuna to feel the full weight of despair, for only then will his heart be ready to listen. The bow has fallen, but in its fall, space has opened, the space where truth can arise. Scene 1.39, Fear of Family Destruction. Scene. Arjuna's trembling words reveal a vision far beyond the battlefield. He tells Krishna that if families are destroyed in war, their eternal traditions will collapse. When these traditions perish, Dharma weakens, and with it, the very foundation of society. His argument is not just emotional but deeply philosophical. He sees himself as the potential cause of an unbroken cycle of decline. Then, in Arjuna's time, family was the living structure that held Dharma together. Fathers guided, mothers nurtured, elders preserved the rituals, and children carried them forward. It was not just about eating together or sharing a roof. Family was the sacred school where virtues like truth, loyalty, respect, and compassion were taught and lived. Arjuna fears that if this structure collapses, society will lose its anchor. To him, the death of a family elder was not only the loss of a loved one, but the loss of wisdom, tradition, and continuity. Kurukshetra, in his mind, was not just a field of war. It was the possible graveyard of Dharma itself. Now, today we may not fight battles with bows and arrows, but our families face wars of a different kind. Isolation, ego clashes, endless distractions, and the breakdown of communication. When homes dissolve into arguments, when values are no longer taught at the dinner table, when elders are ignored and children grow up learning more from screens than from parents, the same erosion Arjuna feared is happening around us. A society where families collapse becomes a society where individuals drift without roots, and what drifts without roots will eventually topple. Focus. Arjuna's vision is a mirror held up to us. Destroying families is more dangerous than losing wars. True strength is not in conquering enemies outside, but in protecting the bonds within. If we allow greed, selfishness, or ambition to eat away at our homes, we are already walking Arjuna's nightmare. Every act of love we extend, every tradition we preserve, every moment we invest in strengthening family ties is not just personal, it is the defense of society's dharma. Family preservation is not nostalgia, it is survival. Scene 140, Collapse of Dharma. Scene. Arjuna warns Krishna that once family traditions are broken, Dharma itself will falter. Without Dharma, people will abandon righteous conduct, and lawlessness will spread like fire through dry grass. Then, for the ancients, Dharma was not an abstract philosophy tucked away in books. It was the living law woven into every action. Farmers tilled honestly because Dharma demanded it. Rulers judged fairly because Dharma guided them. Families performed rituals because Dharma sanctified them. Without it, society had no compass. Arjuna imagines a world where greed and desire dictate choices, where rulers become tyrants, and justice becomes a trade. The battlefield he stands on threatens to ignite such a collapse if the guardians of Dharma themselves, the Kuru clan, fall into mutual destruction. Now, look around today, and you will see Arjuna's fear alive. When corruption overshadows justice, when money buys power, when promises are broken casually, we are living the decay of Dharma. Technology advances, yet ethics lag behind. Success is celebrated, but integrity is forgotten. Families produce professionals, but forget to nurture citizens of virtue. This is the very breakdown Arjuna foresaw. Focus. Dharma is not a luxury. It is the glue that keeps order from turning into chaos. Without it, every achievement becomes hollow. Every victory breeds arrogance, and every system collapses under its own weight. Arjuna's trembling words remind us, wealth cannot replace Dharma, knowledge without ethics is poison, and progress without principles is regression. Our daily choices, to be fair, honest, compassionate, are not small acts, but the frontline defense of Dharma. Upholding Dharma is not a religious duty, it is the foundation of human survival. Scene 141, Women Dishonored. Scene. Arjuna's voice lowers into a somber tone. He warns that if families are destroyed, women will be dishonored, left vulnerable, exploited, and neglected. From this, society will descend into Varna Sankara, the mixing and confusion of lineages, which to him meant the total loss of moral and cultural order. Then, in ancient times, women were regarded as the torchbearers of purity, honor, and continuity. A widow abandoned, a daughter unprotected, or a mother dishonored was not seen as an individual tragedy, but as the unraveling of an entire social fabric. Arjuna imagines a society where widows are exploited, daughters are unprotected, and future generations are born into confusion and despair. His fear is not about biology, it is about culture, responsibility, and dignity being trampled. Now, this vision is painfully familiar. Even today, when women are objectified in media, burdened unfairly in families, underpaid in workplaces, or denied respect in communities, it is society itself that weakens. Arjuna's fear manifests when women are forced to carry double responsibilities without recognition, or when their dignity is compromised for the greed and lust of others. A world that fails its women is a world that sabotages its own growth. Focus. The treatment of women is the litmus test of a civilization's health. Honor women and society thrives, dishonor them and decline is inevitable. Arjuna's vision is not about ancient gender roles, but about universal respect and protection. To care for women is not a gesture of kindness. It is the preservation of culture, the stability of families, and the guarantee of a future worth living. If we want strength as a society, We must begin by ensuring dignity, safety, and honor for women in every sphere of life. Scene 142, Ancestors Forgotten. Scene. Arjuna laments that once traditions collapse, rituals for ancestors will be forgotten. Without offerings, without remembrance, the ancestors themselves fall into neglect, and their blessings fade away. Then, for Arjuna, forgetting ancestors was more than skipping rituals. It was severing the lifeline of wisdom and continuity. In his world, honoring ancestors through Shraddha was an expression of gratitude and an acknowledgement that life is a chain uniting past, present, and future. Breaking that chain meant spiritual bankruptcy. He trembles at the thought that his actions might lead to such a break. Now, modern society often suffers the same disease. We live in the present so intensely that the past becomes irrelevant. Traditions are mocked, rituals abandoned, history sidelined. When children grow without stories of their roots, when communities forget their heroes, when families abandon memories of their elders, they are cutting off the very roots that nourish them. A tree without roots cannot survive long, no matter how tall it grows. Focus. Honoring the past is not about blind tradition. It is about grounding ourselves in wisdom. Ancestors give us identity, direction, and blessing. Forget them, and we drift like leaves in the wind. Arjuna's tears remind us that remembrance is survival. By connecting with our roots, we secure our branches. In every family ritual, every story passed to children, every act of gratitude to those who came before us, we rebuild the chain of life. Forgetting ancestors leads to cultural amnesia. Remembering them leads to spiritual strength. Scene 1.43, The Sin of Killing Kin. Scene. Arjuna concludes his argument with anguish. Those who destroy families, blinded by greed, invite sin not just upon themselves, but upon generations yet unborn. To him, killing kin is not only bloodshed, it is spiritual corruption that stains time itself. Then, in the ancient worldview, kinship was sacred. To kill one's kin for gain was the height of a dharma, a sin heavier than any victory could justify. Arjuna imagines future generations cursed by the actions of a single war, where the children of tomorrow inherit nothing but wounds. His bow trembles because he feels he would not only kill bodies, but poison legacies. Now, today, killing kin often appears in subtler but equally destructive forms: betrayal within families, abandonment of parents, abuse of trust, neglect of children. When relationships are sacrificed at the altar of ambition or selfish gain, the result is the same: generations scarred by wounds that never heal. Every broken home, every forgotten elder, every child growing up without love is the echo of Arjuna's cry. Focus. Greed-driven choices always destroy more than they gain. Arjuna's despair is not just ancient poetry. It is a warning. If we let selfish ambition break our families, our bonds, and our responsibilities, we are creating ruins disguised as progress. Sin is not an abstract curse. It is the ripple of harm we cause that spreads across generations. To honor kin, to protect bonds, to choose responsibility over greed, that is the Dharma that saves not only us, but those yet to be born. Scene 144, Hell of Broken Lineages. Scene. The wind over Kurukshetra carries a chill that isn't from the morning air, but from Arjuna's words. He looks past the glittering armor and sees the invisible, the aftermath. When family dharmas are destroyed, he says, those men dwell in hell. Not fire and pitchforks, a hell of consequence. He envisions homes where lamps no longer light at dusk, names of ancestors falling from memory, rituals unlearned, children adrift, and elders weeping into silence. The battlefield stretches in his mind into years of decay. The clang of weapons fades, the echo of absence grows. Arjuna's fingers loosen on the Gandiva, and his voice turns into a verdict against himself. To win this way is to sentence one's own people to living darkness. Then, for Arjuna's world, hell was not only a place beyond, it was a condition brought on by severed duties. The family, Kula, carried not just blood but law, memory, sacrament, and belonging. When Kula Dharma fell, the thread that stitched lives to meaning snapped. Barbaric, the silent witness in later lore, would say the war consumed more than warriors. It consumed continuities. Widows became easy targets for exploitation, orphans forgot the gods of their hearth, fields were tilled, but harvests felt cursed. Even Draupad's vow for justice trembles here. If justice costs the death of the fabric that gives justice its place to live, what has been saved? Arjuna's hell is the ethical scorched earth that follows moral negligence. Now, our century knows other versions of the same abyss. The hell of fractured homes where children grow up without guidance and elders die alone. The hell of communities that drop their elders' wisdom for quick profit and algorithmic approval. The hell of nations that forget their civic dharmas, truth in public life, fairness in courts, dignity for women, protection for the weak, and sink into headlines of outrage that change nothing. We live hell when tradition becomes trivia, when belonging becomes branding, when history is reduced to hashtags. Arjuna's fear is not medieval, it is modern. Whenever we break what binds generations, shared meals, honest stories, cared for elders, rituals of remembrance, we descend into a cold, efficient emptiness that looks successful and feels lost. Focus. Hell is not only afterlife. It is what arrives when duty to family and community is abandoned. Guard the threads, elders' counsel, children's formation, women's safety, shared rituals, truthful speech. These are not nice to have. They are civilization's spine. Every time you choose convenience over care, cynicism over truth, isolation over communion, you inch your world toward Arjuna's nightmare. Reverse the drift. Reinstate one practice, one conversation, one responsibility that reweaves your family's dharma this week. That is how a private heaven replaces a public hell. Scene 145. Alas, we choose sin. Scene. Arjuna's voice breaks with a word that is half gasp, half prayer. Alas. He sees the Pandavas, himself included, resolved to commit great sin, all for the sweetness of a crown. He pictures the seductive glitter of Rajya Sukha, the pleasures of rule, banners, courts, victories sung by bards, but the taste in his mouth is ash. He calls it what it is, not glory, but a decision to slaughter kin for gain. The confession blazes through his warrior pride. We are not victims alone. We are choosers. In the slow tilt of his head and the tremor of his bow arm, the hero indicts his own motives. Then, this alas, Ahobata, is the ethical thunderclap of Chapter 1. It is where Arjuna's arguments leave strategy and touch conscience. He names greed as the acid eating through kinship. Draupad's tears still demand justice, yet Arjuna sees the danger. Justice, mixed with greed, becomes vengeance in a royal robe. Barbaric's eye would have seen it often. Wars begun in righteousness are hijacked by appetite. Even noble banners can shade selfish hearts. Arjuna's greatness is not his archery. It's this moment of self-accusation. He includes himself in the guilt. No scapegoats, no excuses. Now, modern leaders know this, alas. The executive who approves a merger that will wreck families to juice a stock. The politician who trades integrity for a seat and calls it strategy. The influencer who promotes harm for clicks and names it content. We tell ourselves the prize will justify the path. Arjuna shows the prize reveals the path. When gain requires betrayal of kin, colleagues, citizens, the profit is labeled success and lived as sorrow. Our age confuses visibility with virtue, expansion with excellence, victory with value. Focus. Call your alas early. Name where desire is dressing like principle. Ask, if the outcome is win, but the method corrodes my soul or breaks my people, is it still a win? True power is not getting what you want. It is refusing what will make you unworthy of what you receive. Write the line you will not cross for profit, applause, or rank. Then keep it where decisions are made. The crown that costs your dharma is a curse, not a gift. Scene 1.46. Let me fall unarmed. Scene. A hush gathers. Arjuna says something no soldier is meant to say. Better for me if Dhritarashtra's sons slay me unresisting, unarmed. He imagines lowering Gandhava, stepping into the dust, and taking the blow rather than delivering it to those he loves. The picture is scandalous. The greatest archer choosing to be a target. The horses snort, the pennant flutters, even the air feels stunned. It is not cowardice that speaks, but a radical refusal. I will not purchase a future with blood I cannot bear to spill. Then, in epic logic, this is the brink. Arjuna would accept death as a shield for his conscience. Krishna does not intervene yet. He lets the statement sit, because true teaching must land in a heart that has admitted its own bottom. Barbaric's imagined gaze would see two kinds of unarmed. One is surrender to fear, the other is surrender of ego. Which is this? Arjuna's history says he is no coward. His present shows he is no butcher. He is groping for a third path that feels absent on a field that only offers two: kill or be killed. His unarmed is an ethical scream against binary choices. Now, we face our own unarmed moments, refusing to retaliate when slandered, stepping down rather than play dirty, absorbing a loss to protect someone weaker. In workplaces, families, politics, there are seasons when the sword you're handed is poisoned. To wield it is to win a battle and lose the self. Strength sometimes looks like a quiet no. But beware, passivity dressed as virtue is still avoidance. The line between principled nonviolence and comfortable inaction runs through the heart. Focus. Discern your unarmed. Is it courage refusing corruption or fear dodging responsibility? If laying down a weapon saves your integrity and shields the innocent, that is strength. If it merely saves you from hard duty, that is weakness. Create a practice of principled restraint. 3 breaths before reply, 1 night before retaliation, 1 mentor call before a drastic move. Your greatest victories may be those in which you refused a weapon you could not use without wounding who you are. Scene 147. The bow falls, the soul opens. Scene. And then it happens. Words spent, body hollowed, Arjuna lets Gandhava slip. The bow thuds against the chariot floor, arrows clatter like scattered intentions. He sinks into the seat, head bowed, eyes burning. The warrior's frame remains, but the armor of certainty is gone. Around him, 2 armies wait like held breath. Above him, Krishna's steady presence fills the silence not with answers, but with room. Room for truth to enter where pride has finally left. Then, this is the true end of chapter 1 and the true beginning of the Gita. Not when conches blew, but when a man stopped pretending he could shoulder this alone. In epic cadence, the verb is simple. He sat down. Yet everything shifts. The one who always stood in front now sits to learn. The one who always answered now asks. The bow falling is not defeat, it is invitation. Draupada's justice, Bahasma's vow, Drona's duty, Duryodhana's pride, all still stand. But for the first time, Arjuna is available to something higher than any of them. Barbaric's mythic eyes would say, only after the bow fell could the word rise. Now, we have these moments, the email we don't send, the podium we step off, the task we cannot perform without breaking inside. We sit down not from laziness, but from the honest collapse that says, my tools are not enough. In a culture that worships hustle, collapse feels like failure. The Gita reframes it as doorway. When you have reached the limit of self-help, you are finally positioned for real help. The mentor can speak. The conscience can be heard. God can get a word in. Focus. Allow sacred collapse. Don't medicate every tremble. Sit with it until its lesson surfaces. When the bow falls, trade performance for presence. Ask, listen, learn. Seek the Krishna of your moment, a teacher, a text, a prayer, a practice, and let guidance do what willpower can't. The fall of an identity can be the rise of wisdom. Your I quit can be chapter 1's end, and chapter 2's dawn. Conclusion. The collapse as a doorway. Scene. The battlefield falls silent for a moment. The echo of conches and war cries fade into the background. In the middle of it all, Arjuna lowers his bow, trembling, his body refusing to move. His famed Gandhava slips from his hands, striking the chariot floor like a thunderclap of defeat. Arjuna sits down, shoulders heavy, heart broken, drowning in helplessness. The great warrior who once conquered kingdoms is now conquered by his own emotions. It is the collapse, not of skill, but of spirit. Then, in the Mahabharata, this collapse marks the most profound turning point. The greatest archer of his age, standing before his enemies, gives in, not because his arrows are weak, but because his heart is torn. He foresees destruction, Dharma in danger, families destroyed, and traditions lost. To him, fighting feels like participating in sin. His despair is not cowardice, but sensitivity, an overwhelming flood of conscience that leaves him powerless. The bow falling is not just a physical act. It is the symbol of surrender to confusion, the admission that his wisdom has reached its limit. In that breaking moment, space is created for something higher. Krishna's guidance. Now, how often do we face our own collapses? We've all had moments where we whisper, "I can't do this anymore." It might be in a job that suffocates us, a relationship that drains us, or a responsibility that feels endless. In today's world, we are told to keep pushing, to hide weakness, to mask breakdowns. But suppression only deepens suffering. Arjuna's collapse teaches us the power of authentic vulnerability. When life becomes unbearable, sitting down, acknowledging exhaustion, admitting confusion, is not weakness, but the first step toward transformation. Like Arjuna, we too can find that in the cracks of collapse lies the entry point for guidance, clarity, and renewal. Focus. Do not fear your breakdowns. Respect them. When the bow slips from your hands, it means the ego's grip is loosening. When you sit down in despair, you are creating space for a deeper truth to rise. Instead of labeling collapse as failure, see it as life's invitation to pause, to seek wisdom beyond yourself, to realign with Dharma. Arjuna's greatest gift to us is not his victories, but his surrender, showing that even the strongest must sometimes break, so they can be rebuilt with divine guidance.